convicted rapist and child sex offender Gerhard Ackerman has been handed 12 life sentences today. Ackerman was found guilty of over 700 charges, including rape and trafficking minors. He was found to have sexually groomed young boys and forced them to have sex for money. Judge Mohammed Ismail described Ackerman as an evil man. Women and Men Against Child Abuse has been very actively monitoring this case, and I'm joined now by Miranda Jordan, founder and director of the organisation. Miranda, I know that this is a victory for children's rights. It's been a gruelling case. I wonder if you could just talk us through the sentence and the significance of the sentence, because it was dealing with a lot of issues.
Absolutely, Sally. Thank you very much. Well, you know, when somebody hands down a life sentence, it sends such a hugely strong message, because it really says that you, the accused, Gerhard Ackerman in this case, you decimated children's lives, you decimated lives, and this is the fitting punishment for you. So for us, this was probably one of the best judgments that we have had, particularly when one looks at a case which involves a sex ring and involves multiple other players, of which one was Advocate Kennedy.
Yeah, let's speak a little bit about Advocate Paul Kennedy. Of course, he was also an acting judge. He took his own life, and this is after he realised that he was also going to be charged, or I think he had been charged. I wonder if you could explain how these two men worked together and how big this ring you believe was, because at the moment we know about Paul Kennedy, who committed suicide, and we know about Gerhard Ackerman, who's been given a huge sentence today.
Yeah. Yes, so Gerhard Ackerman was luring men via supposedly a massage parlor in Johannesburg. The men were coming, the young boys were coming from all over the country. We must remember that these were children between the ages of 14 and 16. These were the testimonies that we heard. And they were lured of the prospect of doing various work. The work was not explained to them as any kind of sex work. But in any event, we must remember that these were children lured under false pretenses who arrived in Johannesburg. Their transport was paid, including by Advocate Kennedy, to bring them up and to be given to men, including some men, again Paul Kennedy, who had HIV, to be raped. Very clear. They were here, they arrived, they were sexually assaulted very soon after arrival, and were very soon passed on to a list of clients. Tragically, we do not have this list of clients. We only have Paul Kennedy. On the devices of both Paul Kennedy, the late Paul Kennedy, and of Gerhard Ackerman was a huge number of child pornography. Some of the pornography identified them, and others parts, various parts. But yes, it's a complex case, Sally, because we have issues of trafficking, we have issues of ages of consent that had to come into play. We had issues of pornography being made at the time by the children that had been recruited. We have money that was spent by clients, and of course, which Mr. Ackerman benefited from. And then, of course, the terrible thing, and the only thing that we can now hope that there is some kind of closure for the children, but one part of closure they did not get at all was all the denial that Ackerman has said during his defense. The denial of any responsibility, the denial of the impact on the children, so minimizing all of that, and the fact that these children were willing participants. Well, you know, what we heard from the expert testimony and the pain caused to these children, both physical and mental, in many instances where even after they expressed what trauma they were going through, they were still passed on to other clients. So it is tragic that we have no other names. We know there were a group of names, but that is not forthcoming, and that may have acted slightly in Ackerman's favor when aggravation and mitigation were heard, but he was not at all forthcoming about this at all.
How many boys do you believe were pulled into this sex ring?
Well, we heard testimony from about 9 boys, and I think we could safely say this had been going on for at least a year. The children we're talking about was a couple of months, so I think there are a lot of boys that won't come forward. The testimonies that they gave were painful. A lot of them felt that they were reliving a lot of what they said. They had brought shame and disgrace on their families. They had come from small towns, some of them, with the hope of making something. We are talking about boys who really, children who should have been given every opportunity, in fact, to be helped and to grow and have full lives. And in fact, what was done to them was that they were completely destroyed.
Talk to me.
They were commodities, Sally. They were no more
terrific.
Than commodities. Yeah.
Talk to me about what's going to happen to, I suppose, these boys. Some of them are now young men, but in terms of helping them heal, I also understand tragically that one of the boys is HIV positive and is actually in kidney failure. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct, and it is probably due to that case, actually, that due to that boy, that then Advocate Kennedy was tested positive, and then shortly afterwards committed suicide. Sally, they are all receiving therapy. The expert psychologists that testified, they are in various stages of therapy. And I think this will carry on for quite a while. We will carry on monitoring. A lot of them were brought from out of the province, out of Gauteng. They were brought up by buses and various other modes of transport that were paid for by the clients ordering them here. And some of the small towns have their own therapists, and this is where they will work. But I have no doubt that this is a very long journey. Yeah. What happened to them was a lot of brutality here.
Ackerman spoke to the media after sentencing today. He seems to be sure that he can overturn this ruling. Do you think there's any chance of that?
No, I don't think there's any chance of that at all. He did not deny the fact that the boys were, that these young boys were being given to these men, that these young boys were brought to houses, that these boys were raped for and videoed, that these boys were made to do sexual acts upon each other, that these boys were then often in discomfort and pain and were returned to him. I mean, there was a lot of things that he just said that, well, this is kind of part of what happens. And he supposedly said in kind of the young gay community. And we've taken terrible offense to that. I mean, this is not what happens. This is quite clearly, whether this happens in boys, to boys or girls, this is quite clear a case of sexual exploitation, trafficking, and rape of children. And the fact that he is so glib about profiteering from this and seems indignant and behaved arrogantly and appallingly during the trial. I see it. The evidence is overwhelming. The testimonies said everything, and I think the fact that Advocate Paul Kennedy knew his game was up and took his life was admitting to guilt and being part of something that was quite horrific.
Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening and the good work that you do. And let's hope those boys do manage to heal in time. That, of course, is Miranda Jordan, founder and director of Women and Men Against Child Abuse.